Hello and welcome to the debate on France 24. I'm Andrea Sankey in Paris. Tonight, Rwanda is at justice at last. The UN-backed, Tanzania-based International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda today sentenced the so-called mastermind of the country's 1994 genocide to life in prison. Colonel Bagosora was a director in the Defense Ministry, which oversaw the operations of the ruthless Interahamwe Hutu militia. After a 5-year trial, Bagosora and 2 other former military officers were found guilty of genocide. All received life sentences, but will their convictions help Rwanda heal? Is there still a long way to go before true justice is served for the massacre of 800,000 people? And has the International Criminal Tribunal proven itself an effective tool against injustice? Those are a few of the questions I'll put to my panel tonight. And joining me here in the studio, George Kazolius.
Hello. A
journalist from AITV and professor of global communications at the American University of Paris. Via satellite from Montreal, Canada, Payam Akhavan, former UN prosecutor at The Hague and professor of international law at McGill University. And from New York, Philip Gorovich, editor of the Paris Review, staff writer for The New Yorker, and author of Stories from Rwanda. Thanks all so much for joining us tonight. George, let me begin with you here in the studio. 14 years after the crimes, 5 years after the trial began. Is this justice?
Well, we can't criticize condemnation of people who were involved in such an atrocious act. It took so long, it's really ridiculous. I mean, arrested in 1996, trial starts in 2002. You get these 3 people sentenced. Okay, so 3 people have been sentenced. I understand the tribunal is sentenced in all 33 people. 800,000 people killed in Rwanda, and later on maybe we'll be able to talk about the 500,000 Rwandans killed in the Congo following the Kagame's taking of power in Kigali. So 3 people sentenced to life in prison. Is it all over? I don't think so. I don't think Rwandans are going to forget so easy. I think that the international community, I think the government in Rwanda, I think a lot of people at the top, including the United Nations, would like this now to be a closed book. But I don't think it's going to be a closed book, especially because the fighting continues in a proxy war in neighboring Congo.
Okay, Philip, did you breathe any sighs of relief, or, I mean, is there still a lot more of this to come?
Oh, well, no. I mean, Bagosora has been out of the picture since 1996 with his arrest, so this doesn't alter any contemporary equation. What I suppose the best thing you can say about this is that during the genocide, the United Nations was the scene of a lively debate about whether there even was a genocide going on. Now the United Nations Court has at least ruled that it was a genocide, has identified Bagosora, who was then a member of a government that was seated on the Security Council, remember, during the entire killings, has identified him as having been an author and orchestrator of a rather limited number of the killings in their verdict, but obviously identified that. To a certain extent, there's a creation, at least under an international aegis, of some sort of an account of what really happened in a place where the history is still totally contested and an occasion for bloodshed. At the same time, we're talking about one mastermind, one author from a high level in a crime that was committed through all of the apparatus of state, civil society, and the church, the educational system, the medical system. All layers of society were implicated. And this has not happened in Rwanda. This is not Rwandans coming to justice with themselves.
Okay.
The court was very much at a remove from Rwanda, and that's been a problem as well in terms of the question you ask of how it sits in Rwanda.
Okay. We'll talk a little more about that in just a minute. Payam, let me just ask you, I mean, you were there when the indictment was originally drafted against this colonel. Are you proud of how the trials concluded today?
I wouldn't say the word pride is what comes to mind. I recall what Hannah Arendt wrote about the Nuremberg Tribunal's verdict against the top Nazi leaders, that their crimes explode the limits of the law. And considering the scale of the genocide, no punishment is adequate. So the point really here is not retribution. The point is, as Philip explained, to surface the truth, to establish an objective historical record for future generations, and frankly speaking, to send the message that you cannot commit genocide with impunity. We forget that throughout the United Nations era, post-Nuremberg, the message that was sent is that despite the prohibition of genocide in international treaties, not only can you commit it with impunity, but as was the case with the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, Mengistu in Ethiopia, Idi Amin in Uganda, countless other occasions, genocide was a convenient instrument of power. And for the first time, we have, in the form of the Yugoslav and Rwanda tribunals and now the International Criminal Court, the message that part of the cost-benefits calculus of using atrocities as an instrument of power is the prospect that you may one day be arrested. Okay. I agree that there's not much to celebrate considering the situation in neighboring Congo, which is a spillover of this conflict, but we have to understand that had there been no Rwanda tribunal, the genocidaire leadership would still be alive and well and functioning, and the situation would probably be considerably worse than it already is.
Okay, go ahead, George. I know you had a comment.
Yeah, I agree. The problem is that the victors usually dictate the terms of justice, okay? And so, yes, we're going after the Interahamwe, we're going after the Hutu extremists who conducted the genocide in 1994, but there were other mass atrocities on the victorious side which are going completely unpunished and are uninvestigated, and even, I would say, in some cases, covered up by the international community and the United Nations. And I'm afraid that this trial will be used to say, okay, justice has been meted out, now we can turn the page and move on.
Okay, but I mean, as you say that it's been ignored, the atrocities committed on the other side, we just saw Rose Kabuye arrested. We've had France, Judge Bruguière, file complaints against the president of Rwanda himself. So it hasn't gone totally ignored.
Well, the French are maintaining a high profile in this, and they have a lot of reasons to do that. One is the French do not like this image that they might be responsible for what happened in Rwanda, especially if they can prove that the FPR, those who are in power now in Rwanda, were responsible for downing the plane that killed the president, which sparked the genocide. We don't know, but we do know that a lot has been done within the United Nations to prevent us from moving forward on determining whether this is